You're listening to Oppositional Forces. Bad guys for good reasons. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Oppositional Forces. I am your host, Scotty Don't. And with me in the studio today is Mr. Frost. Mr. Frost, say hello.
Hello.
Kind of like a delayed hello. Today, we are going to be talking about some of my favorite bad guys for good reasons. And that would be motorcycle clubs. Mr. Frost, before we get started, you have a little bit of a checkered history with MCs. And before I start diving into like the deep minutia, I was hoping if maybe you wanted to share some of that. I don't know if you really want to get into like, you know, the deep magic.
Well, I guess I will say that I was born into I'm not trying to drop any names or anything like that.
Everybody's like, what the fuck are they doing right now?
Yeah. So I was born into a family that was part of a very prominent motorcycle club throughout the world. Let's put it that way. So there's a few, so that we'll keep that
safety
there.
first.
Yeah, pretty much for myself even. I had the opportunity to see how the inner workings went as a young child. And then things drastically changed for me, and I was no longer in that environment, but yet still very well educated. And even in my adulthood with working in bars, nightclubs, and just events, you know, you get to be around those elements and really kind of seeing how they work. There's a huge difference between a motorcycle club and a riding club.
Right.
Now the hierarchy may be the same, but their purpose and their missions are drastically different.
It's like night and day.
Right. It's drastically. And, you know, I may talk a lot of smack. I do. But at the same time, I think that, you know, that mentality of please don't push on my microphone.
I was just adjusting it for you. I'm sorry. Don't hurt me.
Anyways, I do have a tendency to probably run my mouth because there are a lot of people that think things like Sons of Anarchy, not that it wasn't like, it wasn't a good show, and I'm not trying to say anything, or even the Mayans, like those are great shows and they are great.
But it's Hollywood.
It's Hollywood.
Yeah,
like, it is. Don't get me wrong. There's a few things that there's probably some truths to a degree. We'll put it like that. But as far as a lot of the things that, you know, they're, anyways,
I know
that's a rabbit hole that I just don't want to dive down. But
I know that you're trying to choose your words as carefully as possible, because let's be honest for a second. This episode is going to tread on kind of the thinnest of ice. I want to get into it so that people have an understanding of what they are seeing out in the open, the things that are visible, the things that are apparent, and sort of decode them a little bit just so that people can see what's there and recognize it and then have a better understanding for situational awareness.
Right. And I think that that's a great thing to do. I mean, you could definitely get onto Net Geo or something like that and watch the documentaries. There's a couple of books about, you know, some undercover guys that went in and infiltrated a couple of clubs, things like that. That's a lot of great information if you're looking to dive down that. But I think there's a lot of misinformation that people don't understand. So, maybe we can dispel some of that stuff as we go along.
Sure. Just a small caveat as we're starting the grind here. Myself and Mr. Frost are not associated with and not claiming association with or membership in any motorcycle clubs.
Or riding clubs.
Or riding clubs, for that matter. Though we both do ride or have ridden in the past.
I don't ride. I want a bike back really bad, but...
Let's go buy bikes.
Yeah.
Should we?
Yeah.
Let's go get matching Indians.
Yeah.
Dude, I want an Indian so bad.
I don't want matching bikes.
Listen, if anybody is associated with Indian Motorcycle Company, I want one, and I will never stop talking about it if I get a free one. Like, never. I'll just devote this podcast from here on out to...
or a serious discounted rate, and I'll even wear your apparel.
Right, exactly. You know what? Since we get some like hardcore listenership, like that's what we need to start pushing for. Like start hitting them up.
Right. Start making patches and putting it on our gear.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about. Well, let's get a couple of things right off the bat. So you talked about riding clubs, and that there is a difference. So what is a riding club?
So a riding club is going to be more like just a group of guys that get together and ride. They may have the same hierarchy as maybe a motorcycle club. Like you're going to have your president, but generally a riding club isn't really big. It can be because you look at associations like BACA, Bikers Against Child Abuse.
Right.
Like that's a fantastic riding club. They are not an MC. However, they interact with a lot of MCs because they run colors.
Right.
And when I say colors, those are the cuts. Those are the vests. Those are the things that have the rockers up and, across the back. And
yeah. And I've got a bunch of stuff here, like as we start diving into it, like kind of breaking down, what they wear and how they wear it.
Right. And that can mean a lot of things. And I think a lot of novice guys take a look. They go to a bike week, or they go to Sturgis, or they go to the Four Corners for these rallies and stuff like that. They see a cut and it's, laid out a certain way. Mm-hmm. And then they put patches in the same way. And those are identifiers. Like some serious identifiers. It could almost be like tattoos.
Right. And so riding clubs don't really have near that much, right?
Right. They can, but generally, for the most part, BACA is, I think I've had some affiliation with BACA just because I've known somebody affiliated with BACA pretty well. And that person, they kind of broke it down to me, and I looked at it and was like, oh, you guys lay it out pretty much the same, but, we'll probably break it down a little bit more and stuff like that. But yeah, a riding club isn't going to have, unless if they're real serious, they're not going to be as disciplined.
Right. So, riding clubs, traditionally were, kind of a product, post World War II. You had a lot of groups spring up who really enjoyed getting out of their head, getting out of town, and finding like-minded, often veterans, that they wanted to, sort of congregate and spend time around. Because, let's be honest, as a couple of veterans ourselves, at least 65% of our friend base is other veterans.
I would say probably 80 to 90% of my circle is veteran.
Right. And it's just because we speak each other's languages. We understand, the ins and outs.
It's not even the same branch, but it's still like I can say something really off the deep end and somebody will laugh and maybe side eye me, but they'll be like, oh, okay. It's just that dark humor. That's it.
And this is disputed. The AMA, or the American Motorcyclist Association, they dispute that this was ever said, but supposedly, and the reason that motorcycle clubs, or MCs, often wear, depending on how they perceive themselves, a 1% patch, or refer to themselves as 1%ers, is because in 1947, the president, or like the global association president, had made a statement that in essence, he was saying, hey, look, 99% of all riders, are not out there committing, criminal acts under the guise of, being part of a club or whatever. It's that 1% that screws it up. That 1% that's got the criminal enterprise, woven into it.
Yeah.
And so like any good anti-establishment punk, style mentality, these MCs picked that up and kind of ran with it.
Right. And that's, I mean, when you start talking about 1%ers, there can be in a club that 1%er, one chapter could be a 1% club and another chapter could be not.
Right. Just one town over.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even, one town, it could be in the same town, to be honest with you, because there are some cities that are just that
they're big enough. Yeah. Like Rough Riders, for example, you've got such a large, organization, even just in Atlanta,
right,
that they segment based on, tinier regions of the city.
Right.
So oftentimes these organizations are referred to as outlaw motorcycle clubs, or outlaw MCs. And that denotes them because they are not sanctioned by the AMA. So when we start talking about like, these, what we kind of refer to as like OMGs, or outlaw motorcycle clubs, this is not some sort of like pejorative. I'm not trying to.
That's a big word. I don't even think I know what that word means.
Like I'm not dissing or disrespecting an organization by referring to them as an OMG.
Right.
It's just.
It doesn't stand for, oh my God.
No, it does not. It's Outlaw Motorcycle Club.
Okay.
So as just so people understand, like as we're kind of, rolling this back and forth, that we might be using some acronyms, and I just want everybody to be on the same page. But the U.S. Department of Justice disagrees with kind of the AMA's way of denoting an outlaw club. The outlaw club for the AMA is just that, hey, that's not a sanctioned club. They're not a part of us. We don't recognize them, as a motorcycle club or a riding club. And so that's why, we call them outlaws, because they're outside of our, laws and bylaws. Yeah. But the U.S. Department of Justice says that OMGs are organizations that use their clubs as conduits for criminal behavior or serious domestic threat. So you have to be careful, if somebody is specifically identifying themselves or their club as an outlaw, you have to kind of keep in mind that they're more or less leaning towards explaining who they are via the Department of Justice's explanation, and not so much the AMA.
Here's the thing. I'm going to tell a lot of people in this world, it's cool that you want to have a bunch of guys ride together, and regardless if it's a sport bike and whatever, you're cool. You're a group of guys. You want to have your own cut or whatever. But I need you to really, really think about it when you start doing this type of thing, because you need to be aware of having, if you're big enough, having a liaison. Because there can be some beef because nobody identifies you as a riding club versus maybe an outlaw club or, 1% club or just a motorcycle club. that you could be in their area and not even know it if you're not paying attention. And suddenly you have a lookout that's seen you, called somebody, and now you got 10 bikes surrounding you, pulling you off the side of the road, asking you what you're doing, who you are,
right,
why you're there. People laugh and think that, oh, that's bullshit.
Yeah, but if you want your ass handed to you and your bike dismantled, you know, screw around and find out.
That's definitely a fuck around to find out.
Right.
Most definitely. And especially if you come off really cocky and disrespectful, because, you know, even though maybe it's a 1% club, respect goes a long ways.
Right.
They have a code of ethics. Just because maybe they identify as 1% does not mean that they're off the handle, a bunch of berserkers running around drinking and, you know, robbing and raping and pillaging the town.
So, yeah, and we're definitely going to kind of start scratching into that. Before I start getting into the structure, I'm going to hit you guys with a promo, and then we'll be right back. All right, everyone, we're taking a brief moment to talk to you about one of our favorite sponsors. That's right. The Barber Collective is a Southern Utah mainstay, U.S. veteran owned, with an elite team of classically trained barbers for you to get that dapper do, professional fade, or a cut on the wild side. Competitive pricing with walk-ins available. You won't walk out disappointed that you tried The Barber Collective. Call today and schedule your appointment. Mention oppositional forces and receive your first cut on us. You can schedule online at vagaro.com/barberco. That's VAGARO.com/BARBERCO. Or call them at 435-922-8454. That's 435-922-8454. That's the Barber Collective. Don't let that do you wrong. Go see them today. All right, so let's talk about the structure of an MC. It's I don't know, when I look at it, I see it kind of built almost the same way that a Fortune 500 company is set up.
Well, sure. You got to think that a lot of these MCs started from, you know, veterans. I mean, you're coming back from the wars and stuff like that. And, you know, that I don't want to keep touching on the 1% stuff, but a lot of those guys were coming back from Vietnam. A lot of those guys are coming back from the Korean War. They're coming back from, you know, World War II type of thing where nobody understands them. You know what I mean? Nobody. So they're just sticking together.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what makes sense? We understand rank structure.
Yeah.
We were in the military.
Exactly.
Why not use that same kind of structure?
Yeah. You know, something that helps you understand when you're standing in a room full of people that you're meeting for the first time, where you fit in.
Right.
You know, and almost immediately. So typically what you'll see is a president and a vice president. And of course they see over, you know, the administrative sort of executive decisions, you know, and doling out things like punishments or, you know, the repercussions of doing something that, you know, the club has decided, you know, you've done wrong or done to make them all look bad,
or even a promotion.
Right.
I mean, they have the final say.
Yes. Then you have a treasurer and a secretary, and those are, you know, of course, important. You know, you got to keep books, you got to keep records, because a lot of the time, you know, even these organizations, though they may at times look like, you know, they operate in the fluidity of, I don't want to say the word criminality, but, you know, the fringier side of ethical. And so they have to be able to maintain record who, you know, who's a part of them, who's paid their dues. Hey, we did this charitable event and we took in this much money, blah, blah, blah. You know, so you still have this sort of kind of rigid structure that allows the club to operate efficiently. Then you've got the road captain. He's often in charge of the routes, the rides. I'm sure you can expound on that a little bit.
So a road captain, I think this is different for a lot of clubs, or even just clubs in general, or even just groups that kind of follow this. It really kind of depends, because the road captain and the sergeant at arms is kind of like, that sergeant major status kind of, and it's one of those, like, is he a master sergeant or is he, sergeant major?
Right.
Type of thing. And a sergeant at arms is essentially in charge of the security of things.
Mm-hmm.
But the road captain
enforces those rules.
Yeah, he's kind of the enforcer of sorts. But a road captain on a ride is the one that plans the routes, plans how they're going to ride, where they're going to ride, type of thing.
Like road safety standards.
Essentially, who's going to cage.
Mm-hmm.
He makes sure that happens. Now, I don't know if you had further down the road about caging, if anybody understands what caging is. So caging is anybody who's in a car and not on a bike.
Mm.
And you will hear that term a lot with guys who ride a lot, is fucking cagers, or, I was in a cage today. Maybe they rode to a rally, or they went to church. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're going to talk about church, that's in your notes, but you go to church and, I forgot my cut and I caged today. You know what I mean? Because it was snowing or something like that. But you'll catch a lot of shit. But I'm gonna say this: if somebody tells you, or is wearing a cut or colors, and gets in and out of their car with those colors on,
you have license to beat their ass. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you don't. But they're not honest with you. They're not a part of a club. Because that you don't display your cut or your colors in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't wear that in there.
In the car.
In the car. It does not happen. Part of wearing your colors is to display them.
Right.
You can't see that in a cage.
Sure.
And I've had some instances here in St. George, actually, of a gentleman and his wife really talking some smack to me. He had a legitimate cut on, but he climbed right into his car with his cut on.
Yeah.
And I just looked at him. I side-eyed him, and I was kind of like, what the? And he goes, what are you looking at? And I was like, nice cage. And he looked down. He looked at his patches on his, and he like just freaked out. He literally freaked out, like,
because he knew that you spoke.
I'm not fucking around. You know what I mean? And you're with a legitimate club.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't know somebody in that club.
Yeah.
Because I love to talk shit, regardless if I'm in that club or not.
Right.
Because it's fun. It's fun to say, hey, I didn't know you guys wore your colors or your cut in a cage. You know what I mean? Just in passing. And
just let them pucker.
Oh, who'd you see in a cage with a cut on? You know what I mean? Because that's how you earn nicknames, or that's how you earn some
bruises.
Not so great extra duties in aspect.
Right. So then, of course, we talked about the sergeant at arms and kind of his general responsibilities. Then you have kind of the general population, your active members, full patch members.
Well, you missed something, and I'm going to say this, and a lot of people don't understand it. There's a couple other titles, but a liaison. There's always a liaison, and sometimes they're considered part of the hierarchy, or they're not. But they're usually an older or more senior rider. They're not affiliated with any other club or any other group, but they have a good standing with everybody else. They don't have any beef with anybody. And those are the guys that will call, like you're doing a big long run with your club.
Right.
And let's say we're leaving here in St. George and we're going through California down the 15.
God.
all the way down to San Diego. Well, he's going to call those chapters from here to there and be like, hey guys, I know we don't have any problems with you, but I'd just like to let you know that we're making a run from St. George down to San Diego. We don't mean any disrespect. And that other liaison will go back to the president and say, hey, just so everybody knows, this club is coming through here. We've told them that they can't stop in this area. They can't do this. You know, they need to get fuel. They need to get fuel before.
Right.
This is how it's going to happen. And if you can't respect that, I mean, ultimately, depending on the club and how that kind of works, you can cause some serious turmoil everywhere.
Right.
Just from disrespecting.
Just from riding through an area that is
and not letting
not yours.
Know. And just not letting someone know.
Right. What else you got? What other positions?
The liaison's a pretty good one. I would say the liaison, like, that's usually an OG guy. You know, there's just other guys that there's a lot of different spots, but I want to say majority, your road captain, your sergeant at arms. Sometimes the sergeant at arms is the road captain. That's not always true, but
just depending on size and availability.
Well, yeah. And then, you know, anybody can actually be designated as a road captain depending on a ride. And that's one of those things. And that's designated from the actual road captain or sergeant at arms, or even delegated from, you know, the president or the vice president. Another thing, when people are talking, they will address a president as the P. They'll say, hey, the P of this club, or the P or the VP type of thing. You know, that's one of those things that you have to pay attention when you start seeing guys or ladies, usually old ladies or whatever, in some of these clubs or riding clubs that, you know, oh, he's the P. You know what I mean? Like, that means he's the president.
Right.
And everybody sucks his dick. You know what I mean? Like, not figuratively or physically, but, you know, well, figuratively.
Yeah, figuratively, not physically.
Yeah. Maybe somebody is, but
okay.
That's one of those things.
So then we've got kind of your local active members, your chapter members, full patch members, and we'll get into patches here in a little bit. Then you can often have like inactive members. Those are people who are just you know, they've kind of migrated into the non-dues paying, semi-retired, like
supporters.
Yeah, we'll show up, you know, I'm getting old, it's getting harder to ride, so I'm going to be here for the big events, but I'm not going to church, you know, every month.
Right.
Then you have, oh shoot, and I forgot to write this one down, but you've got the non-local affiliated members that are like often lifetime members of like a mother chapter.
Well, those can be either considered nomads.
Yeah, nomads. That's what I was looking at.
That could be considered a nomad because you don't have a home.
Right,
like
a nomadic member.
You have, like, collectively, you kind of bounce around. But that's not always the case.
Right.
You could be part of a chapter and go to church. I mean, you have to, there's certain rules of church, and, you know, some of you maybe have watched Sons of Anarchy and know what church is, but church is like where they do like pass down all the information of, hey, we're going to go do this ride. We're going to do this. We're going to, you know, this is when we plan to, you know, patch some of the prospects in, or, you know, we're somebody's birthday. We're having the birthday bash for everybody in this month here at the clubhouse, or we're going to go, you know, on a run or something like that, or this run is coming up. Start thinking about it, figure it out, because you need to be there.
Right. So then as we kind of trickle down the hierarchy, then like you mentioned, we have prospects. prospects being an interested party in becoming a full member.
Right.
And then you have associate members, which oftentimes consists of like your hang-arounds, your friends of the club, and your old ladies.
Right.
So you still are, wearing, adjacent paraphernalia or
supporting
some color,
something that supports,
right.
Support your local blank.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of clubs that have really started to learn how to market that stuff, which is great because, they're making money for their clubs and, they're getting the support and stuff like that. But yeah, they're really starting to kind of get names out there because of that.
Branching out into the swag world.
Right.
So basically the way that these are made up nationwide, worldwide, is oftentimes you have what they refer to as the mother chapter.
Right.
And your mother chapter is the original, the OG chapter where everything was founded. The name was decided, the organization, the bylaws, were all set there. And then through their own efforts and through the interest of, people moving or wanting to affiliate, with that mother chapter, can charter new chapters basically anywhere, right?
Well, yeah. And that really kind of depends on how many and area. I mean, you get somewhere like California or Texas where everything's so spread out. Mm-hmm. You could be, let's talk about California. You could be in LA and be part of an LA chapter, but you want to be affiliated with the San Bernardino chapter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that depends. You know what I mean? Like, who you're with. But, you can still go to somebody else's church and not be in that chapter.
Oh, okay.
And that's not everywhere, but generally, church is church. Like, that's how it is like, unless if it's a, like, serious situation. But, if you want to go to church, you can go to church to, San Bernardino's, and then you can go to San Diego's, and then you can go to LA's, and then you can go to Oxford or whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever it is. But you should probably know somebody in those chapters and be able to reach out and say, hey, I'd like to come to your guys' church.
Right. Okay. So then as you have, identified an organization near you, maybe you have some friends that are, friends of the club or hang-arounds or something like that. And you're looking at it and you're saying, you know what, like, I kind of want to see what this is all about. I want to get involved. How does one join an MC?
Well, that's a trickier question.
Well, I mean, so let's, without getting into like the subculture, the hazing and everything, because I do want to touch on that here in a little bit. But generally speaking, like, what kind of time commitment are you looking at to prospect into a club?
That's up to the club.
Yeah.
Seriously, it kind of comes down to, you could prospect for a year. If they don't feel you're ready to freaking, they'll keep you as a prospect. They'll keep you as a prospect as long as they want.
Right.
I mean, that's the shitty part about it being a prospect, is that, you're running and grabbing beers, or you're, paying for everything. Somebody needs a ride because they were drunk at the bar, and you're in San Bernardino and they're in Tijuana, Mexico. You're a prospect and somebody calls you, especially somebody who is sponsoring you, essentially, because you have sponsors in some clubs. That person calls you, saddle up, brother.
Right.
You're Cajun down there, if that's what they want, or you're going. Like, you do not have a choice.
Right.
That's how this works, is you're pretty much for, excuse me, some of the more hardier clubs, you're at their beck and call.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if you work the next day and, you got 4 hours till you go to work. That sucks. You're going to be late for work. Might as well call in sick because they don't care.
We've got things to do.
Right.
So,
and that's some clubs. That's not all clubs. And I'm not going to say that's everybody, but I'm going to tell you, like, in a serious MC. No, I know about riding clubs. Don't get me wrong, but my world is definitely the MC world.
So, culture, as we're talking about, like, becoming more aware of what you're seeing, what that means. There is a culture of otherness, of being outside of the law, or at least the perception of being outside the law, at least as far as like cultural norms, cultural mores.
Yeah, you join a club. Yeah, you don't have other friends.
Right. And you're going to start sticking out like a sore thumb.
You don't associate with other people for the most part. You have social media and you're part of a club. You got to get permission to post stuff. I mean,
wow.
Literally on social media.
Is that why you don't? Because you'd be making phone calls all day, like, "Hey man, what about this meme?"
Yeah, pretty much. No, and it's not necessarily memes. It's more like you say something about the club or you represent the club. Like, you got to get that okay. Like, because a lot of guys are proud of their clubs, so you're gonna be wearing your swag. You're going to be wearing that hat, or you're going to be wearing that shirt, or you're going to be flying those colors. Like, hey, no, you're not, you don't post your colors. You know what I mean? You don't do that kind of stuff. That's how you can kind of tell in a quick glance. Not always, but for the most part, you can tell in a quick glance if something's a motorcycle club or a riding club.
Yeah.
Because riding clubs all day long, you'll see patches and all sorts of stuff.
Like Riders for Christ.
Yeah, you will vary the holy roller stuff. I don't mean any disrespect for you guys that are sober, like sober riders, like, respect, man.
They've got law enforcement, the Blue Knights.
Right. We got all sorts of veterans. We have the Marine Corps. We have, I think there's an Army. There's,
Leathernecks.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different clubs out there. But, you're not going to see somebody posting their colors or their cuts in pictures. You're not. And if you do, you got to ask for freaking some serious permission. That's like asking Congress to change a law.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean,
honest with you.
So I got a question for you. So this is like in the Marine Corps when we would have shore leave, and you're feet dry in, Rota, Spain, and you're walking around and from the offset, like, for every moment I'm out here, I am that obvious, member of this military organization, and so you are representing it every step of the way.
Right. That is exactly.
Drunken disorderlies, DUIs. Everything. Slapping, the woman who just showed you a good time. Like, these things weigh very heavily against you and the perception of the Marine Corps now globally.
Right.
So anything that you do that misrepresents your OMG, is essentially to them kind of like an international incident would be to us.
Oh yeah, most definitely. It definitely could. When you guys go on social media and you look at Sturgis, or you look at the, somebody who may be in a riding club or something like that, and they take a picture of a bunch of, let's say, HA guys. It's kind of hidden. Like you can tell that they're like trying to nonchalantly take a picture of some Hells Angels or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to get that picture of the cut. And people who know, oh, I'm not going to be in the greatest graces. And it just kind of comes down to, you go somewhere like Sturgis, or you go somewhere like Four Corners, or, Bike Week or something. You're going to see that everywhere. But you're also going to see a lot of places. I've worked a lot of bars where we've decided no colors can be flown.
Mm-hmm.
We post that shit everywhere.
Yeah.
Hey, no colors, no colors, no colors. Even if it's in an area where there's a prominent club, we still won't let them wear their colors in there, even though maybe the owner is affiliated with them.
Right.
Because it causes too much conflict, and it just turns into, okay, this is a safe space. Everybody kind of knows who everybody is anyway.
Sure.
And they're gonna mind their P's and Q's unless if they're there to cause problems.
Right. So some of the culture of these OMGs, when I was kind of looking deeper into this, I know that there's like a heavy leather subculture. It has a lot to do with like, that rocker and punk subculture from Great Britain and stuff like that. It's bled over from, originally it was like denim cuts. And now
there's some clubs, or especially riding clubs, that use denim, or even there's some OMGs that actually use denim. Why? I don't know. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I think it's just that sort of nod to the years past and their affiliations from before.
Right. I wear, when I used to ride, I wore leather because, well, as much as I hate a helmet, now that I'm a little older, I'm putting that brain bucket on just because I know how stupid some of you are in a car.
Yeah.
Like, so erratic. And especially nowadays, when I first started riding, we didn't have cell phones. Like, we didn't have that problem. We had more problems with people looking down at their radio, trying to turn up the bass to, sound cool going down the road. Now you got to worry about people texting and TikToking and
laptop and driving.
Right.
I've seen that one.
Reading a book, especially in states where you can cut lanes,
Right.
And I don't know if anybody knows what cutting a lane is, but that's essentially riding down the white lines in between cars.
Right.
And cutting lanes is dangerous, because it used to be like illegal that you couldn't cut lanes because people in rush hour traffic would get pissed because guys on bikes would be shooting down the lane. And what these cars don't understand is that a lot of these bikes are air cooled.
Mm-hmm.
So you sit and idle, the bike's not cool.
You're burning your bike up.
Yeah, you're burning it up. So, and it's not hurting anybody. Like, you're not, they're getting there faster than you, whatever, but you don't like that, ride a bike.
Right. And here in Utah, just for the Utah listeners, lane sharing is what it's referred to on the state books. And it is lawful so long as the road is a 45 mile an hour or faster road of travel, that it is not a freeway, and it is designed for bikes as they approach a red light, that they are allowed to slip in between vehicles up the white line so they can get to the front, because they were able to show, statistically speaking, a lot of motorcycle deaths here in Utah were associated with being rear-ended at traffic lights.
Right.
So if you can
sometimes you don't get off your foot fast enough.
Right. So, and especially with people not paying attention and quote unquote not seeing bikes.
Right.
They went ahead and changed the law so that those bikes could move to the front of the line, so they were not at risk of being rear-ended.
Loud pipes save lives.
Yes, they do.
I bitch about it. I will be the first to admit it. I hate it when somebody comes screaming by and their bike's screaming. But at the same time, I appreciate it because when I'm on a bike, you can hear me. It may scare the shit out of you when I come up around your corner, you know, the back side of you, but you see me.
Right. You hear me.
If you hear me coming, at least you're looking around like, I don't see him, but
I know he's there.
I can hear it.
Right. So let's see. We talked about leathers, charity functions. Now there is some dispute as to whether or not, you know, these OMGs are truly practicing charitable work, or if it's a means for them to disguise, you know, income or trying to improve their reputation amongst their community. And it's all tongue in cheek. But as far as I could find, at the very least, they are legitimately, you know, putting money in and toward helping their communities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. It's like a bar. You don't want the cops around. It's like you look at, you know, these gangbangers. If they live in an area, they're usually nice to their neighbors because they don't want the cops around.
Right.
Especially if they're slinging dope or something like that. Like, the less cops, the better off you are if you got something shady going on. You know what I mean? Like, less attention I can get, the better off I am. And, you know, for the most part, even like a 1% club, they have some pretty serious rules about, maybe not back in the day. And there are some, don't get me wrong, because I've been affiliated with those people. But harming children, hurt a kid in front of a bunch of bikers. See what happens. See, you just fucked around to find out, to be very honest with you. Like, that's one of those things that they take pretty freaking serious. And it's one of those, you wouldn't think about it of, you know, oh, this guy's rough and stinks like cigarettes and he's tattooed from head to toe. And, you know, you can tell that he's just rode hard, put away wet type of thing, or whatever you want to call it. Fuck around and hurt a kid. See what happens. Especially some of these guys that have been to prison for a few years.
Right.
And they got kids of their own. Like, I mean, if you're a parent, you know what you would do for your kid. Think about it. Like, you're not doing something, somebody else is going to do something. I mean, that's just how it goes.
Speaking of prison, I saw that when, you know, members, especially in your OMGs, are incarcerated, they oftentimes band together in their own groups outside of even like ethnic boundaries.
Yeah, they will. I mean, I'm gonna say this. It's kind of like I'm gonna say this. It's kind of like American History X. If you haven't seen that movie, go watch that movie. Like, don't let your little kids watch it, but it definitely explains kind of the Aryan Brotherhood and the whatever skinheads, whatever you want to call them. But usually some of the MCs or OMGs will band up with, you know, the Aryan Brotherhood, depending on the club, you know, or they'll band up with the Hispanics, or they're banded up with the blacks or the Asians or whatever it is. But prison is a whole different ball. Like, it's a whole different world, and it changes the dynamic. And I think that's where a lot of some of the old school guys and some of the new school guys are starting to clash heads, because they don't see it as an ethnic thing. They see it as a money-making opportunity, but they can't keep that line separate outside of prison or jail, and in turn causes problems. So I've seen a lot of guys, you know, we met a new gentleman that that got out of a gang, a very serious gang. Let's put it that way. We met another gentleman that is part of a
very serious
club, and they're in a way kind of related. You know what I mean? They're both Hispanic, but one is out and one is still in. And the one that's out, I had a conversation with, was like, it's not like that anymore. It's all about money. They don't care who or what or anything like that. So it's starting to take away from the club. You're not a club anymore. Now you're just a gangster.
So I guess kind of trying to break down what you're saying is like, yes, there are elements to this where, you know, they still have a respect and nod toward trying to function as a beneficial element to their community.
Right. Sorry. I know I went down another rabbit hole, but as far as charitable stuff, like, it's legit. Like, you know, there's a lot of rides for MS. There's a lot of rides for children's hospitals or Shriners or something like that. Like, it's legitimate. They do that. Just like every charity organization that says they're collecting money. I think for a charitable event, I think you only have to like actually donate like 3% of actually what you make or something like that. I don't know what it is. Don't take, you know, don't hold that word as gospel, but
right. Some organizations, they put more, you know, than others, but
right. But they put it in their coffers. You know what I mean?
You just have to explain what that money was used for if you're a 501c3.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, some people say this, but I will say legitimately, you pass a hat amongst a bunch of bikers and say, hey, it's for this kid or this family that maybe lost somebody in the club, or even for a kid that like legitimately is sick, everybody will throw money in it. Like, it's just one of those things.
So now I'm out and about. I go to Costco, right? And I'm walking down, you know, the big old aisles of Costco, minding my own business. And I see somebody turn the corner wearing leathers with a cut on. The cut, and we've been referring to this a lot, cut or colors. This is the vest that they wear. Oftentimes were originally referred to as a cutoff.
Right.
Because they would cut sleeves off of their riding jackets, sometimes referred to as a battle vest or battle jacket.
Right.
And now it is used as the delineation of, you know, I am a member of this organization, and this is how you can identify me. This is how you can recognize what there is about me, not only to other organizations, but to the public at large.
Right.
The reason I wanted to kind of save this towards the last is because for me, I want this to stick out the most for everybody so that you understand what you're looking at. This is not, you know, the big, you know, scary boogeyman that just because they are there and present, that now you are in, you know, in a situation where you should be, you know, fearful for your own safety. But this is something that you have to pay attention to, you know, when you're exercising situational awareness, because there are things that you just don't do around people like this. Mr. Frost, you mentioned this earlier, and it's don't take pictures.
Right. Just be respectful. I mean, ultimately, I don't like having my picture taken. Don't get me wrong. I like to spread my
You take
face.
your own picture.
Right. But I don't like somebody random taking my picture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some guys that just have some cool vests that have a cool patch on it or something like that, or design or whatever. If you're, you're I don't know, whatever you want to call it, a freaking lone wolf, or, I mean, I've seen a lot of those patches of like lone wolf rider, whatever, not associated or whatever. But they have some really cool stuff on their cuts.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take a picture of it, just be like, hey, man, where'd you get that? Or what's that? Start a conversation, be polite.
Right.
But it's like anything else. Like
Be respectful.
Somebody has a shirt on that you like, hey, man, where'd you get that shirt?
Right.
Well, hey, I like those shoes. Where'd you get those shoes? Treat it just like that. But if you're going to take a picture, ask. Like, they'll be honest with you, like, hey, I don't want you to take a picture of this. I'll take a picture with you, but I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose, of course, but, you know, I'm just saying.
Right. So
courtesy.
So you've recognized someone and they're wearing a cut. And so now we want to break down and try to, at a glance, understand who they are or what they represent. First and foremost, as we were talking about the cut does not, for an OMG specifically, more often than not, does not belong to the individual rider or member. It belongs ultimately to that chapter or to that club in its entirety, which is why it's so heavily regulated and why it's so cherished. That as long as they have it and wear it, it means that they're in full standing, that they have done what they need to do in order to be able to wear that. You see somebody walking around and they've got a cut on and all it has is like a bottom rocker that says Prospect. That's their entry level wear, but they're also very proud of that. It means I'm out here doing what I'm supposed to do, being told, go here, do this, whatever. But I'm enjoying the privilege of working my way into something that I see, some sort of brotherhood or camaraderie or something like that I'm really interested in.
So I just real quick, I know that we're kind of running out of time here, but generally you will not see a prospect without a full patch member, like out and about. You may see them in transport too, but if they're out and about in public and at an event, there's probably a full patch member there.
Kind of like a police officer would have a FTO for their first year.
Right.
And there's always someone there that
even once
helps them.
Yeah, once you get fully patched, sometimes you're still attached to that person. And some of them call them sponsors. Like they kind of take the heat for you if you do something stupid as a prospect. Not all clubs do that, but for the most part, you're essentially holding somebody's pocket when you're a prospect.
Aren't we all holding somebody's pockets?
Right. You're somebody's bitch. If you don't know what holding the pocket means, it's a jail or prison term of you're somebody's bitch. Like you hold their pocket and will do the things.
They're in charge of what happens to you.
And how it happens.
Right. Yeah. So trying to dissect and understand somebody's cut or colors. You're going to have a main patch, the main logo. And that is the treasured mark of even just riding clubs.
Right.
It delineates which organization you're a part of. And oftentimes like a coat of arms or, a family seal or crest, has kind of a story built into it, and a history. So if you see, this big patch, then that's them being branded, right?
In a way, yeah.
Right. And then above that brand, that logo, you often have a top rocker. And I'm talking about OMGs specifically. And that top rocker is usually, the name and the official association, because sometimes you can have a main patch that recognizes a much larger organization and then have a top rocker that kind of identifies a regional name or something, that can vary, right?
Sometimes, but it's very unlikely. You could be a support club. But you're going to have your own cut for that club.
Right.
But you're going to have something that identifies usually, you know, I'm going to use HA as a good kind of understanding of, like, you could be a support club to HA, and somewhere on that patch, on that cut, it's going to say 81s or HA or in support of or support your local.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you're going to know, but a lot of those colors are going to be similar to an HA patch. They're not going to have the same, you know, back patch by any means. It could be something totally different, but very rarely will you have an OMG patch and somebody's name on top of it, another club's name on top of it, because that's super disrespectful.
Oh, okay.
So that's,
I guess I misunderstood how that worked then.
That's like flying the American flag and then flying another flag above it.
Ah, I get you. Okay. So, but then I do know that the bottom rocker is very much the where you're from.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it could say like
what you are,
a county or a state or a city.
Right.
Maybe even like, you know, if a city's broken up into several chapters, maybe a chapter number or like a sub name.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
Okay. And then of course, with this being an MC, the MC patch is kind of essential to this whole thing, right?
Right.
So if you're identifying an OMG, there's going to be an MC somewhere by their main patch.
Right. Usually it's on each side or in the patch, in the design of the patch itself.
Mm-hmm.
It will say MC, or it'll say RC, Riding Club, MC.
Motorcycle Club.
Yeah, motorcycle or RC, Riding Club. And those who are affiliated with riding clubs make it very aware.
Right.
Like, you can tell that
from far away
that is a riding club.
Please don't run me off the road.
Yeah,
we're in a riding club
type of thing. And those guys generally don't get messed with the clubs, the MCs, because it's usually just a group of degenerates running around, unless if they're trying to claim something or cut into something, you know what I mean? And then that kind of changes the dynamic 100%. But, you know, a lot of those guys, they're so oblivious anyways of like, anyways.
So you've got the whole setup on your back, on the back of your cut, and you've got your colors up. For an OMG organization, this does not always transcend from chapter to chapter, but that 1% diamond patch.
Right. And they can be big, they can be little, they can be embroidered, they could be a patch, they could be, you know, it could be just a 1%. Like, and that can be even defined as the person, not necessarily the club that they belong to or the chapter they belong to. They could still be 1% and still be a member of another chapter. Generally, does that happen? No, because it's all about affiliation anyways. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to put a bunch of 1%ers or 1%er with somebody who doesn't want to be identified as an actual 1%er.
Right.
Because like we said earlier, just because you're part of a 1% club doesn't necessarily mean your chapter is 1% club.
Right. And so, just to kind of recap, and tie this all back in, most often you're not going to see, just a run of the mill, motorcycle club, that is a 3-patch club. Top rocker, main patch, bottom rocker, especially associated and stamped MC, and then of course that 1%er patch. The 1%er patch is not necessary for somebody who is delineated, or is representing a 1% lifestyle or a 1% club. But if you've got a 3-patch color or cut, with MC on it, you can pretty much take it to the bank that even if you don't recognize the name, that you're dealing with someone who's OMG.
Right. And that's not a fuck around to find out.
Right. A couple of other things you might see, and this is not a broad brush painted across all the different clubs, but we've talked about shows like Sons of Anarchy and the Mayans, things like that, and they kind of make a deal about. I haven't watched the Mayans at all, but I did watch Sons of Anarchy, and if you did something especially murder, but if it was a significant act of violence on behalf of the club, you would get like a front patch that said Men of Mayhem. And in the research that I was doing for this episode, I saw that a lot of times what you'll see is like a skull and crossbones patch, or there's a quote patch that says "Respect few, fear none." And those are patches that are supposed to identify someone, at least within those specific clubs, that have done acts of violence or extreme
violence to somebody or even a police officer. It may be different. Like Men of Mayhem for some clubs could be that's against the government, against cops, like you assaulted a cop, like you're a man of mayhem. Or, Skull and Crossbones could be maybe you took out somebody in another club, or you committed murder or something like that. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's definitely club specific, but it's club wide.
Right.
Like they don't, like one club doesn't, like one chapter doesn't say Man of Mayhem and the other one is Skull and Crossbones. It means the same thing. It means the same thing across the board.
Right. So if you're seeing some extra work, on a cut, you can probably bet accurately that it is representing some activity that they've been a part of, and it's not Toys for Tots.
Yeah, and generally that's going to be nipples up. Anything above the nipples is going to be generally club specific. Like it'll have they're the master of arms, or they're road captain, or
rank, title,
vice president, and the name on there is their road name. That necessarily doesn't mean that's their name all the way across, but usually it's the nickname. But that is their road name. And that's what they usually go by. Like, that's just how they associate each other. Like, they don't know first names and stuff like that. There's, a lot of writing clubs, that somebody, I've heard them talking about somebody and they know them personally. They're like, oh, John, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's like, who the hell are you talking about?
And they're like,
Reaper. You're talking about Reaper over in Santa Barbara chapter. Okay, I know who you're talking about now. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like that type of thing. But you're definitely not going to, your road name. Now, I'm going to say for a riding club, sometimes you get to pick that road name. But it's pretty much like a nickname sometimes that you receive for doing some stupid ass shit. I'm gonna say this, like that's how,
or some cool shit.
Yeah, or some cool shit. But
right, nobody calls you Reaper because you like mess some shit up.
Well, you could. It could be like that's just knocking on your door. You know what I mean?
Oh,
there's a lot of different reasons. It's like I have a call sign in with the select few. I'm Red Bull.
Yeah.
And it's not because I drink a bunch of Red Bull or drank a bunch of Red Bull. It's
because your stupid ass couldn't get it out of your hand fast enough.
When I was at a training with a police department with, we were setting an example of how things should be done. And I get out of a vehicle with a Red Bull in
Still
my hand.
gripping the Red Bull.
Yeah, and the instructor even said, don't have anything in your hand when I sat down in the vehicle when you get out. And I still got out. Like, that's the kind of stupid shit, you know.
All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to MCs and OMGs. They've got kind of a checkered past for,
and not always though,
white supremacy.
Right. Well, some clubs,
especially in some of the larger names and the older names, there was a lot of emphasis on white only. To be a full patch member, you had to, be able to show your ethnicity as predominantly white or all white.
Right.
That is not really the case anymore for most groups. Some of the more diehard 1% organizations, it may still appear on the books, but I don't think that there's a lot of blood testing going on.
There's not blood testing, but I mean, I because it's a prominent club and I'm not affiliated with anybody, you know, you look at HA, you're not going to see, you know, a lot of black people in the HA. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
And because it's that stigma. Am I saying that there isn't? I don't know. I have yet to see a black HA member, but I'm not saying it hasn't happened or doesn't happen.
Right.
I'm not saying. But you look at
about as rare as a full patch female member.
You're not going to have a female member that's patched in HA ever. And if you do, that's like
that's what I was saying is it's about as often as a female member.
Right.
Which is another thing is, you know, there is a long history of men only clubs.
Right.
So when you're dealing with an OMG with a 1% group club, you know, there's still kind of these old notions that seem to stick long term.
Right.
And when I was looking at a lot of this, and I know that there's, you know, links and association and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to brand this onto every group because there are some that are specifically, you know, for different ethnicities. Right. I don't want to call a bunch of names out because I don't want to be disrespectful and blanket different groups, but there are Hispanic only clubs and there are black only clubs.
Yeah. Mongols mostly are Hispanic. The Vagos are usually Hispanic, but there's a lot of white dudes in the Vagos too. You know, those are considered OMG clubs. I mean, definitely the Mongols and definitely, you know, the Banditos and things like that. I mean, but you look at clubs like HA or you look at clubs like the Sundowners. I mean, that's kind of a Utah thing. Like I haven't seen a whole lot of Sundowners anywhere else, but Sundowners here in Utah, they're all white. Mm-hmm. They're all a bunch of white old dudes, not to disrespect them in any way, shape or form, but like, they're just kind of, you know, they're kind of fading out. I don't know what that is or whatever, but I'm not affiliated with them either. But,
so, one of the ways that I saw that you can kind of pick out groups like that, at least at a glance, you'll see oftentimes these nods to like Nazism. So you'll see like SS lightning bolts, the Totenkampf,
which is sad because there's actually some really cool stuff that even AB or, you know, people like that have taken that are actually really cool designs, but
right?
Have given really bad condensation to, or that's not the right word, but you know,
connotation,
yeah. Condensation.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, and there's things that just are never going to be rehabilitated in the eyes of our culture, which is things like the swastika. Now, if you go to India, you'll see swastikas all over the place because they're not swastikas, because they're not slanted.
Right.
You know, but it's a symbol that appears in a bunch of their, you know, cultural, you know, designs,
right.
You know, because it's a symbol that meant something to them. But if you see, you know, canted swastikas SS, lightning bolts. If you see the skull and crossbones that was worn by, their name just jumped out of my head, the German secret police. The
KGB?
No, that was Russian.
Oh.
Somebody is yelling at their speaker right now in their car.
Dick.
It's like, it's
probably Mr. Valentine, to be honest with you, because he knows all that stuff. But I agree with you. And in that quick glance, you could definitely look and see. Not everybody is whatever, but you're definitely going to be able to identify who's affiliated with what.
Right.
I mean, but ultimately, anymore, unless if they're doing something just to be dicks, they're trying not to skyline themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, they're just doing their thing. It's not necessarily you have to cross the street. You don't have to, just be respectful like anybody else. I mean, there's some shady people out there that aren't affiliated with any MCs or any OMGs or anything like that I would cross the street for long before I would even consider being worried about a club that, I know is doing nefarious things in my area.
Right. So here in a second, I do want to go into the other associations. But before that, I'm going to hit you guys with a promo. Hang on. Check out our friends at Smash Labs Rage Rooms, a Southern Utah exclusive with franchise options available. You won't find another adventure spot quite like this. 5 axe-throwing lanes with a variety of edge weapons and their special Rage Rooms, where you and your friends can work out the day's frustrations by smashing TVs, home appliances, and all kinds of glassware, big and small, and an ever-evolving range of ceramic and miscellaneous items sure to thrill the senses. Call them today and schedule your date night, special event, or even large private parties. Visit their website at www.smashlabs.biz and check out all their special pricing packages, or call 435-359-2214. That's 435-359-2214. Walk-ins welcome. That's Smash Labs Rage Rooms. Awesome. So I want to ask you really quick as we're getting towards the end of this longer episode, associate clubs, they're not, by name recognized groups, but I noticed a lot of chatter in my research about puppet clubs, support clubs, satellite clubs. Can you break that down for me a little bit?
So a puppet club might be a club that is kind of one of those clubs that, like, that specific main club controls everything that they do, like a puppet, if that makes sense.
Right. So they're not carrying the HA logos,
right?
And
they're
patches.
They're not wearing the support your local 81s or support your local Hells Angels or whatever. They're not. They're kind of that, they've just taken control of that club.
Okay. And so that kind of goes into the same thing as like support clubs or satellite clubs.
So a support club is usually a smaller club that maybe they're trying to get on the map or, just affiliation. Mm-hmm. It might be, a couple of guys, like their old man is part of, one of the bigger clubs, but they don't necessarily want to be a part of the bigger club, but they have their own club locally and they're like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, but we're your support club. So, we're kind of the foot soldiers essentially, but we're not a part of your club, but we support you and help set up the charity runs. We promote the things that you do. Maybe we have parties and you come to our parties, or, it's affiliation essentially is what it is. They'll look out. There'll be lookouts. A lot of those clubs are lookouts for, other clubs rolling through. Like it maybe that chapter doesn't have any kind of presence in further down in like an I-15 corridor, but it's still your area. You know what I mean? And there's whatever going on. And that affiliate club or support club calls up and says, hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but, there's a group of these guys rolling down the road, kind of just doing their thing. And,
owning the wrong space.
Yeah, kind of owning the wrong space. I mean, and then they look out for each other. But also being a support club, you have that bigger club to back you with other things of, if you're in pretty good standing, you got beef with another local club, it's easy to call Big Brother or whatever and be like, oh, okay, you want to be stupid. Cool. I got more support than you thought I did.
Right.
But everybody knows that you are a support club too. You know what I mean? That's just how it is, because they're generally support club is going to have, the same colors are close to as far as color wise and things like that.
We have an organization like that here in St. George, right?
Right. We do. And I make fun of them all the time. And I found out that I probably shouldn't, but I still do, because their members are douchebags. And then a satellite club could be, they offer their space for, essentially like gatherings, or they could be just only there temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's exactly what it is. It's exactly how it sounds. Satellite. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's hard for me to explain without going into some serious depth that somebody would be like, hey, motherfucker, you keep running your goddamn mouth and you're going to end up waking up next to a horse head type of thing. Cause I know those fellas, and it's, I'm not trying
they don't want you to air their dirty laundry.
Right. Yeah. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody. I really am not. And I use some of the bigger names just because
it's recognizable. And, I'm not saying anything that you can't look up at on Google, Wikipedia.
Interwebs.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, with that, I recommend that we blow the door and get the hell out of here. Hey, thanks everybody for listening. Big shout out to Tom Larson, our executive producer.
Thank you, Tom.
Big shout out to all of our sponsors and to our Patreon subscribers. Patreon is growing, everybody. Yay! Get in at the ground level, and we'll start shipping horse heads your way.
Making horse heads happen.
Yeah, we're still trying to organize like how and what we want to do to recognize and appreciate our Patreon subscribers. It is coming down the pipeline. Be patient with us. But if you want to see us get that stuff out, hey, please, please, please go to our website, badguyforhire.com. Subscribe to our Patreon. The link is there at the website. Look around and see what we do. Feel free to ask questions. Contact us. Like, we can cut and paste and build training evolutions for you in all kinds of different ways.
And if we don't have those skills, I promise you, I will pull out my Rolodex and I will direct you to where you can go.
Oh yeah. No, our Rolodex is, the little black book of death, violence, and training.
Right.
So if you want,
and that goes overseas too, for those of you who hopefully are listening overseas, I have a lot of European contacts as well.
Yeah. So if you are looking to get something done, pretty sure the bad guys know how to get it done, and it's them dirty deeds that is done dirt cheap. So feel free to drop us a line, ask us questions. We're more than happy, day or night, to answer the call or reply to the email. Just let us know what you got going on. So we appreciate everything that you guys do for us, and we will catch you next time. Down, boy. Thank you for listening to Oppositional Forces, Wage War, and Stack Bodies.